Welcome to Frost Astrophotography. In this video, I'm going to look back at the astrophotography season 2022 and 2023. I'm going to share with you some interesting statistics, as well as all of the images that I processed during the last season. Before we get started, I want to apologize for not putting out a new video in a while. There's been a lot going on in my personal life, and I'm going to bring that up in a later video. What is a typical season up here in the northern part of Sweden at 63 degrees north? Well, I have astronomical darkness from September to December and from January until April. Right now, a couple of days after Midsummer's Eve here in Sweden, I basically have daylight all day and all night, making it impossible to do any astrophotography whatsoever. I'm really looking into maybe in the future purchasing a solar telescope and a planetary camera, so I have something to do in this hobby during the summer other than interesting builds and projects, of course. I am planning on constructing a new automation for the roll-off roof for my observatory, and I will see if I will manage to complete that this summer. I also have some data left from the season, and I'm going to make a couple of videos, collaborations with a friend of mine who is also an astrophotographer, and some private projects as well. So keep an eye out for those videos later this summer. My current equipment is the old trusty SkyWatcher HEQ5 Pro mount with the SkyWatcher EvoStar 80 ED Pro refractor and the SkyWatcher EvoGuide 50 ED guide scope. For my main camera, I have the monochrome ZWO ASI294MM Pro, and as a guide camera, I have the monochrome ZWO ASI120MM Mini. To complement that, I have the ZWO EAF and the ZWO EFW, and that is the motorized focuser and the motorized filter wheel. In the filter wheel, I have the ZWO LRGB and SHO 7nm filters. I have my equipment mounted in my miniature home observatory that I built last summer, and if you haven't checked out my videos for that build yet, please do so in my channel. The miniature home observatory is equipped with an automated roll-off roof, a concrete pier of 250 millimeter with a do-it-yourself pier adapter that I made from a brake disc with a 60 millimeter center hole. All of the electrics, the computer, camera, lighting, etc. in the observatory is automated through a Homey home automation unit and Z-Wave relays. Moving on to the nerdy statistics that we all like. Well, I do anyway. So for the 22-23 season, I had a total of 34 imaging sessions, and I managed to capture 16 objects. Now I know that that might not seem that much, but I really like to gather as much data as I can on each object instead of just photographing a lot of objects with less time. So the grand total for these 34 sessions and 16 objects were 2,371 light frames and a total integration time of 160 hours. Now I also did around, I don't know, a lot of calibration frames. Let's say for each session, depending on the filter, I normally do around 40 calibration frames for each filter. So if I used, let's say, 3 narrowband filters for one session, that is 120 calibration frames. So if you calculate those, and I haven't yet anyway, you will add a lot of more frames, but I'm only counting the light frames for this video. And the object with the most integration time for this season was the Flying Bat and Squid Nebula, racking up 40 hours of integration time. I think I used around 30 hours for the final image after I had filtered out a lot of O3 frames with light pollution. I will come back to the images in the end of this video. Breaking down the light frames, you will see that I captured 403 light frames with an exposure time of 60 seconds, 218 light frames with 120-second exposure time, and 1,750 light frames with 300-second exposure. That is 5 minutes. Now 300 seconds is my normal go-to exposure time when it comes to narrowband imaging. If we dig even deeper in the light frames, you can see that I captured 257 light frames with the luminance filter, 175 light frames with the red filter, 176 light frames with the green filter, 178 light frames with the blue filter, 320 light frames with the S2 narrowband filter, 707 light frames with the H-alpha narrowband filter, and 558 light frames with the O3 narrowband filter. Now, how do you keep track of this, you might ask yourself, and is it really necessary? Well, it's not necessary, I guess, but I keep a large Excel file of all of my objects that I have captured, and with information on the exposure time and the filter and positioning information, etc., so that I can extract this information to use in a video like this, but also to use for future projects and combinations of data. Looking at some average numbers for sessions and objects, we see that I typically use 70 frames per session if you calculate the average frames, with an average integration time per session of 4.7 hours. Looking at the frames per object, you can see that I have an average of 148 frames per object and an integration time of 10 hours. Now that is a lot, you might think. But I have a few projects with a lot of integration time, such as the Flying Bat and Squid Nebula with 40 hours, and that will affect the statistics, of course. As I said in the beginning, I normally don't do any objects with less than 3, 4, 5 hours, I would say. Now, did I do any equipment upgrades? Well, I kept this slide in here because technically I did not do this upgrade during the 22-23 season. That started for me summer of 22. I did this in spring of 22, but I thought I would keep it in here since this is the first video that I make with a summary of the entire season. So, did I do any projects and modifications? Well, I built the home observatory, as you might know if you follow my channel. That consisted of 21 build videos on YouTube with a raw video material of 107 hours. I started building the observatory on June 18th and I finished it on October 5. I really don't want to count the number of hours that I put into building the observatory. But I really put it to good use since the 160 hours of exposure were all made from within the observatory and all remotely from within my house. I just thought I would share a couple of images. Here you can see that I have built the base and I've started framing the walls. I've actually put on the roof here. I made the roof rafters myself and I put on the condensation plastics here to keep the moisture away from the inside of the observatory when I've put on the metal roof. Here you can see me put on the roof, starting to be fairly finished. I made some custom moldings or metal plates to join the roof and the main structure together so that I would not have any water or moisture going into the observatory. Testing out the roof, it works great opening and closing, and finishing touches such as painting and installing some brush molding on it. It worked flawlessly during the whole season. Now for some YouTube statistics that might be interesting for you. During this season, I made 53 videos, and my channel in total, not only the videos that I made during the 22-23 season, but for all of my videos, I had a total of 99,883 views. Now that is from 1st of July 22 until the last of June 23. There is a couple of days left because when I'm recording this, June is not over. I've had a total view hours of 9,013, and during this season I managed to get a 1,172 new subscribers to my channel, and I want to personally thank you all. It really warms my heart to see that you want to look at the videos that I make, and as long as you want me, I will continue with making these videos. The video with the most views during this period was one of my first videos, actually, a very short I wouldn't say a review, but it could look like a review when I mounted my ZWO EAF Automatic Focuser. And during this period, I had 6,993 views of this video. And now, the moment you might all have been waiting for. Well, some of you enjoyed the statistics more, admit it. But we are going to look at the images that I processed during the 22-23 astrophotography season. Here we can see the Veil Nebula. I captured this in HOO with a total exposure time of 3.3 hours. Moving on to the California Nebula. This is an SHO image and with a total integration time of 7.3 hours. I'm very happy with managing to capture the blue 03 in this target. Next object is the Jellyfish Nebula. I captured this in total 6 hours in an SHO image with HA stars. Next target here, the Teddy Bear Nebula with a total of 7.4 hours. I really had some problems here with the 03 signal, and I had a lot of light pollution in my light frames that I had to process a lot in order to be able to use it. Next in line, well, I actually captured the Comet C2020 E3ZTF 2 times. The first when it was very small, and the second one when it was much closer to Earth. So this is an LRGB image of the comet with LRGB stars and 1.3 hour total exposure time. I had some problems bringing out the tail in this image, but I managed to get it looking somewhat good. Hopefully I will get the chance of making more comet images in the future. The next image is actually a collaboration, although this image is my data only. We joined some friends from the SAAF, the Swedish Amateur Astronomy Association. I think we were 5 or 6 people, gathering a lot of data, combining images in a lot of ways, but my processing skills were not good enough yet to incorporate other people's data, but I will give that a try later this summer or maybe in the winter time. But my version of the Medulla Nebula here in HOO is 20 hours of exposure time with my own data. Next image here is the Monkey Head Nebula, and this is 4.5 hours of exposure with the 4XX palette. That is a version of SHO that is available as a plugin to PixInsight. My version of the Iris Nebula here in LRGB with LRGB stars. I would have wanted more of the dark clouds surrounding this nebula, but I'm fairly happy with this 7.7 hours of exposure. And the object with the most integration time. I actually captured 40 hours, but ended up using 31.5 hours of the Flying Bat and Squid Nebula. And it took a lot of processing to bring out the O3 signal, the squid in the middle here that you can see. You also see some rather big halos on the stars there, but that is due to the 7nm O3 filters that I use. And I captured the Andromeda Galaxy in LRGB with HA data. I think I did about 7 hours of HA data, and that is the red that you can see circling around in this galaxy. I also tried some interesting techniques first introduced by, I think it was Galaxy Hunter on his YouTube channel, where he added HA data to an image, and I thought I would try that with the double cluster of Perseus, and this is 8.3 hours, most of which is HA data, and that is the red that you can see in this image. And then I added the LRGB stars on top of that, and you can see clearly the two clusters in the middle of the image here. That was all for this video and the images I managed to process during the 22-23 astrophotography season. I'm looking forward to the 23-24 season, and hopefully you will join me on my YouTube channels for interesting videos about processing and objects. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're not already doing so. If you want to support me and the production of these videos, there is an option listed in the video description that you can use. Until the next video, I wish you have clear skies or astronomical darkness, so that you can take photographs of the night sky.